So one question to start. I want to see if you can name the person who said this. This is a quote.
Okay.
Who said, "I play football and I'm nuts."
Me.
Who said that? Of course it was you.
Yep. And by the way, if you use that clip and you hear my accent, ain't nobody ever thought that dude was gonna be on television. I can tell you that much. That was one of like the first interviews I think I ever did, and I always remember. I play football. I'm nuts. I mean, I just had a horrible. I was not good with the camera. I actually despise the media pretty strongly. I was not a big media fan just because of I think more of the false narratives, more of the not paying attention stuff that would drive you kind of nuts. If you'd asked me in college if I'd ever been in the media, I'd be like, absolutely not.
And that was a good interview. And it was, I mean, your voice has evolved. I heard a lot more Snellville, Georgia than I heard New Jersey in that interview. Even though you're born in New Jersey, I heard some Snellville in there.
You dang Skippy, bro. Thank God. My dad, growing up, my dad, we moved down here when I was 4, and my dad would always, he's like, "Hey, you're going to be a Scarlet Knight." I'm like, "What the heck's a Scarlet Knight?" He was like, "Go to Rutgers." I was like, "No, absolutely not. Not going to Rutgers." Like, he was a big Giant fan too, because we were from up north, because he was from up north. But I was like,
right.
Nah, bro.
I mean, that's got to be a hard thing for them. I'm not asking to start, some controversy here, but that's got to be a hard recruiting thing when people say, "Hey, you're now a Scarlet Knight." Like that doesn't really seem to appeal to
that doesn't embolden you. That doesn't.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so.
No, I think they've got plenty of the weather. My official visit to Ohio State was a really quick one. I first time on an airplane. Me and my mom and my daddy got off the plane, and literally, I remember like, "What is that white stuff on the ground?" I'm like, what is that crap?" And they're like, "Yeah, that's snow." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm not coming here. Like that. That's way too cold." And it just proves that God has a great sense of humor, because I get drafted by an Ohio Bengals, Cincinnati Bengals team, so get to go back. But literally, I will never forget that on the recruiting trip. Like that's a real thing when you're a Southern boy coming up north.
Man, no kidding. That's got to be brutal. So did your dad? So was he from New Jersey originally? He was up from that area.
Yes, sir.
So how did he take to the South? I mean, he raised a good Southern boy, so he did a pretty good job. But how did he take to the South? Did he immediately love it and it fit him?
Yeah, my grandparents moved down first, and then so my dad and my mom kind of followed. Just got a job and came down south. But yeah, I think it was easy, man. I think it was. Once you've been to the South, you realize it's kind of easy to live here. I mean, it's a lot of fun. People with really good manners. Life kind of slows down a little bit, so it's definitely it takes some time probably to get used to for a lot of people. But no, they definitely obviously loved it and haven't thought about moving back up north again. I can promise you that.
Well, you mentioned good manners. I can tell. I mean, you respect your elders. You respect me, even though I'm about 18 months older. I appreciate you treating your elders with some respect, calling me sir. That's very nice.
Got to respect you. Hey, mama went upside my dome when I didn't, so it was pretty simple. Like, it's the same thing now. My kids say yes, sir, no, sir, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. And it's the way it is. It's ingrained in you once you've been down here long enough. I do remember going to Ohio, though, and I'd be like, yes, ma'am. And like, I'm not old. Do not call me ma'am. I'm like, listen, my mama hits harder than you. So I ain't real worried about you. Mama P would go upside me. I ain't worried about you getting upset with me, but that's how we do it in the South.
My wife is from Buffalo, and people, when they call her ma'am, she gets mad. She doesn't like that. And I mean, Oklahoma, that's how we grew up. Same thing. We say sir and ma'am, but she gets offended by it. So that's a real
I can't wait to meet her and say, yes, ma'am.
She'll love that. She will love that. What did your dad do? I'm curious, looking at you coming up, and you just had this, I mean, you got 2 speeds, you got sleeping and then all out. How much of that was born in you? You talked, and actually, I'm going to interrupt myself. Did you really play tackle football on the streets? Were you guys really, I saw that in that same interview. Did you guys really do that?
Of course we did. You didn't do that?
I didn't, man. I was destined for the Scarlet Knights, man.
You should have changed families. No, I mean, I remember we would play we would play basketball, no fouls, no rules. I remember that on concrete. That always led to
concrete.
Yeah, you didn't want to leave your feet very much. you try to run through people. You didn't want to do that. But of course, no, we did. I had an older brother who was 3 grades above me. And he was not as near as it's crazy because he graduated high school. He was about 6 feet. He was about 113. I was
Wow.
6'3", 275. So it couldn't have been more opposite. It was kind of like one of those things like you can pick on my brother, or I can pick on my brother, but you can't. And that it was like that for
Right.
me. Like as a freshman, I had to defend my brother because I was so big. So yeah, we grew up with a bunch of buddies. We just played a ton and tackled and knocked the crud out of each other. And my parents like to tell a story. I've never told this story before. My parents always like to tell a story between me and Max Miller, one of my buddies growing up, and we're about to play a 10U championship game. And at Shallow, we played on a field that didn't even have a stadium. It was just a big hill. And me and Max got in a fight before the game, and we're rolling down the hill throwing punches. And they're like, the other team was scared crapless because y'all were fighting each other, at 10 years old, just throwing blows. So they knew they were in for it. So that was we definitely did a lot of that growing up.
Hey, that's a pretty good move to just an intimidation of the other team, just like your own team just beating the crap out of each other before the game.
Yeah, just as long as you keep your helmet off, don't throw punches and hit helmets. That's not very bright.
Yeah. So what did your dad do when he in terms of raising you into, I mean, did he see early, said this guy's got it, like he's just crazy enough and he's got the physical talent and the physical size enough and the talent? Looking back, what did he do to engender, and this is a question for myself, like with having a son, to develop that but not burn you out, that whole balance of encouraging and pushing you without just totally discouraging you?
I don't think Norm ever once really. I don't think Norm looked at it from a view of trying to always like get you to a point. I think my dad was really really good. My dad has unbelievable patience. Like you talk about one of the fruits of the spirit for him. He's got it in spades, and it's very hard to ruffle his feathers. And I was rambunctious, and I had so much energy, and I was all over the place. But Dad didn't get upset very often. I could probably count on one hand how many times I've ever seen him lose his cool or lose his temper. And both of my parents, man, they just let me play. They just let me be me. And I didn't have a personal trainer. I didn't have a personal workout person. I didn't have all this crap that a lot of these people think are super important. They let me be a kid. I rode my bike all over the place. I played in the yard. I had friends. And so I think that's a big message when I talk to parents a lot of times is, like there's absolutely a time to grind in your athletic career. It's
Yeah.
just not at 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Like I just 13, 14. I just don't think those are the ages. I think the more you facilitate fun, the more you facilitate effort, attitude and effort. That's always what we focused on is attitude and effort. Like you have a good attitude, you're working really hard. Like, it's a couple things that I try to say to my kids, after every single game. And I never mention home runs. I never mention hits. I never mention touchdowns. I try not to mention shots. I'm like, did you have fun? Did you
Yeah.
give everything you had? And I love you regardless. Like if you suck, I love you. If you
Yeah.
miss 30 shots or you score 40 points, I love you. Like it doesn't matter. So I think my dad, I don't know if he intentionally did that. I think that's who he was and what he was. My dad was my head coach, and he did an unbelievable job. And we won 6 or 7 championships in a row. We had some really good talent. He was super duper organized, but he just let me be me and let me be a kid and encouraged and loved and made us love it. We did bonfires, as in youth league football. We did goodie bags and highlight tapes and just all kinds of awesome things to make me love it. And I got news for you. When you love it, man, it's something you want to do. When you
Hmm.
don't, it's not something you want to do. The difference between me and everybody that I was around at the University of Georgia, there was so many 5-star kids. I'm a 3-star kid. There's so many guys with, strength, speed, all this stuff to put it together. But I had a genuine love. Like I love to work. But I also wasn't grinding as a kid. I wasn't past that stage of, man, this sucks because I've been doing this for 5, 6, 7 years. I was like, this is awesome. This is
Yeah.
great. Like I get to go work out. I get to go do this. And so I think that's what my dad did a really good job of.
So you didn't need motivation. Like at some point, both of you must have seen that you were different, right? You must have known, and maybe what was that point where you said, where whether he or you said, okay, I'm different from the other kids.
I hit puberty my sophomore year of high school.
Wow.
And I grew like 6 inches and gained like 60 pounds. But here's when that's when it kind of turned for me. But we didn't know before that point anything about anything. But my sophomore year, I was on JV, but I couldn't play JV because I was a backup on varsity and I needed to rotate in, and they saved my quarters. So I was kind of stuck between varsity and JV and didn't end up playing really at all or hardly any. And so I went to my coach and I was like, man, this stinks, dude. This is awful. Like, I'm putting in all this work and not playing. I quit. I don't want to do this anymore. And I had a coach, Eddie Shaddix, who he was like, hey, man, just come work out with me and just come work with me a little bit. And I don't think Eddie had any preconceived notions that I was going to be something great. I think he just liked being around me and wanted me around the program, running me around the team, and didn't want me to quit. And then I started just growing and growing and growing, and then I started gaining weight, and we started working out. And what changed me was the weight room. I was a good athlete. I mean, I tell people that all the time. I was a good athlete. I became a great athlete when I could squat 650 pounds. Like God gave me a great legs and a great trunk. And once I started training, I really developed it. And then another thing that was big happened going into my senior year. I have scholarship offers from, Georgia, Florida, Ohio State, Georgia Tech, Clemson. I got a new coach that came into Shiloh High School, and I'll never forget this. And this is a daily reminder for me and parents, because parents are always like, they need to push, they need to do this, they need to do this. Well, it's just like with your faith. Your kid's going to see it when they see it. Like, you can't force it into action. You can't force things onto people and make them work. Bob Krieger, our new coach, calls me in his office and he's like, hey, man, if we're going to win the state championship, I'm going to need you to work harder and play harder. So I'm the only player on the team going to college. I'm by far the best player on the team. I'm like, this dude's crazy. Like, I'm your best player, and you're telling me I got to play harder. And he turns on a clip, and for the first time, he turns on clip after clip after clip, and I'm watching. I'm like, he ain't wrong. And I started I went into spring ball. That was right before spring ball. I went into spring ball, and I started flying around like a madman. I mean, I started flying around all over the place and practicing really hard. And what it translated into is playing really hard. And once I learned how to practice, my habits carried over to the game. And it only intensified when I got to Georgia, and I had John Fabris as my defensive line coach, who was on edge all the time, always getting you to play with your hair on fire, and Brian Van Gorder. So, they intensified that flame more and poured more gas on it. But it started by I didn't see that till going into my senior year. And you just can't make people see things, and you can't really see the potential, and you can't make people see their potential in themselves, just by saying you can do this or you can do that. It's not, they have to see it at some point. There's an aha moment for everybody. It's just a matter of when it hits.
If your dad would have said that to you, would you have received it as well, do you think? Or was it because you'd heard your dad's voice all your life? I think about this with my son, who's almost 15, he's a tennis player. And I think and I think he's getting immune to me saying some of that stuff to him, and it takes that third party voice. Was it because it was a third party and he showed you, and what would the effect have been if it would have been your dad who said that?
Norm didn't say things to me like that. Norm didn't push the envelope. Norm didn't sit me down and have conversations. I've had 10 times more conversations with my 14-year-old than my dad ever did with me. I would say I'm probably more of an intentional parent, and also my kid is very different, which was really cool. God gave me a kid that, like, he wants to know the rules of everything, and I'm like, you're playing defense, tackle the guy with the football. But how many players are there? 11. Tackle the guy with the football. How long is the field? I'm like, oh my Lord, have mercy, kid. Shut up and go tackle the guy with the football. And I tell you, I can tell you this, just some of y'all that are screwing it up, I was screwing it up bad. I mean, I was just intense, and I go from being an NFL player and being so competitive, and I compete and I fight in everything, and then I have a kid like this. It was very different, man, and it had me calling into question, like, dude, what are you trying to get out of this? Like, why is his performance affecting how you look at yourself? Because he ain't got nothing to do with you. Is this about you? Are you just being selfish and you want your kid to be the best because you got a reputation to uphold? And man, I had to do some self-searching, and it's really because I didn't understand kids in college that didn't work hard. Like, I had roommates that I would be like, I got a key to the weight room. Let's go to the weight room. They're like, we worked out this afternoon. Why would I go work out again? I'm like, we ain't done. We got better. We got to get better, bro. Like, we can get a lot better. And I'd never really understood those people. But God gave me a kid that was like that. And it was way easier to understand because I naturally separated myself from people like that. And I didn't have that choice with my son. And so it's been really cool along his journey to watch the small victories, to watch his personality change, his temperament change, his competitiveness change. And I'll say this, testosterone changes everything. And if you'll see that with your kids, man, like keep it fun, keep it light, enjoy it, blah, blah. And when they get testosterone, you'll see, man, my kid went from being quasi-competitive to like, oh gosh, I care about everything now. And so then I kind of knew. And then just like, seventh grade basketball for Nicholas, I said, hey, buddy, I'm not coaching you. He made the eighth grade team. I said, this is the first year I'm not coaching you. I said, I'm not going to offer my advice unless asked. And I coached him since he was 4 years old in all the sports, all the things. And Nicholas asked me one question all year long. One question. And it was about playing time, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, but that just showed me, like, dude, you're talking to hear your voice. He doesn't want your advice. Now here's what's really cool. Fast forward a year. And Joey, here's what I got this year, eighth grade basketball. Hey, keep talking to me. Keep telling me what you see because it helps me. Okay? That's this year. Here's what I don't know. Ninth grade might be different. And we might go back to shutting up again. So be it. But I'm gonna let him take the reins on what he wants from me in those capacities. I'm not gonna go crazy with it. And I can't care more about his journey than him. And so that's all I'm trying to do is I'm trying to support. That's not the most important thing in our household anyway. Sports are a part of our household, but it's not the most important thing. But if my son or my daughter wants to play or wants to practice something, they 100% know daddy's in. But daddy's not going to tell you have to go practice. Daddy's not going to make you get up and go do things. Daddy's not going to be your driving force. I'm your dad. I love you. I'm your dad. I'm going to be here for you all the time. But I'm not your motivator for sports. I'm not your motivator. I'm not your motivator for your work ethic. That's a you decision. You have to decide if you want to work, and if you do, I'll meet you anytime you want.
That's such a hard. I feel like I have a mirror in front of me. You tell me this. It's stuff that I need to be. It's stuff I need to hear. As my son is about to turn 15, great tennis player, but you see inside, like, no, you don't understand. I start superimposing my experience on him, which I'm 6'5". I was a pretty good basketball player, and I could have been a lot better had I put in a little bit more. And I didn't push myself. And so I'm he's in eighth grade playing on the varsity tennis team, and so I'm looking at myself, saying, well, I got to make sure he understands the possible future. So there's that balance, but at the same time, like, he doesn't give a rip about, because I don't play tennis. And when I tell him what he's doing on his forehand, even though I may be right, he's just looking at me. I can see, like, Dad, you're an idiot. You don't know what you're talking about. And he's probably right. He really is. But so the balance, the question embedded in that is there's a balance between, what it takes because you did it. What it requires, but you got to hold yourself back from saying, here's the stuff that you have to do. That's got to be a hard balance.
Well, here's the thing, though. If we say it's their journey and you stop trying to control their journey, it's more freeing. And listen, I'm not saying I'm perfect at this all the time, but it's not my journey. So you learned in a certain capacity. I just told you, and here's the thing, Joey, I bet you didn't get it at all. You're saying you didn't really get it at all. But you're trying to force him to get it at eighth grade, or I'm trying to force Nicholas to get it at eighth grade. I got it as a junior in high school. I can't force it into them. I can't make them get it. And honest to God, I think you're way more inclined to drive them away than you are to drive them to what you want them to be. I think you're way more inclined they're way more inclined to go, you know what, this sucks because you're always on me. I always got to handle this. I always got to do that. I'm going to go the other direction, bump that. But I think when we find the balance between being an encourager, here's one thing, Joey, that I think will really help you if you choose to do it. What's your son's name?
Harrison.
Okay. So sit down with Harrison. I've done this with Nicholas and with Liam. Sit down with Harrison. I sat down with Nicholas. I was like, Nicholas, all right, buddy, what are your spiritual goals? I want to read my devotional every day. Bam. Yeah. Okay. I want to build that habit. What else? I want to go to church every Sunday, every Wednesday. Boom. Awesome goals. Love it. All right. My job as the dad, to try to help take those goals, help them get focused on those goals, maybe try to help them accomplish those goals. What are your academic goals? Want to get straight A's. Okay. Do you want to go to college? Yeah. Okay. If you want to go to college, it takes good grades, blah, blah, blah. It's harder. Okay. What are your sports goals? I want to play in the NBA. That's what Nicholas told me as a 12-year-old 2 years ago. He said, I want to play in the NBA. I said, awesome. I said, okay, so now how do we make little goals to try to accomplish that big goals? Because it's going to take that. I want to shoot 200 shots every day, 365 days out of the year. Okay. I think a lot of parents go, that's really awesome. That's great. Let's start tomorrow. That's not what I said. I said, hey, I think you could do that 3 days a week and be really good. I don't think you have to do that 5 days a week. I don't think you have to go 5 days a week, 365 as a 12-year-old. I just don't. Right. And I don't think you're going to succeed. But here's my favorite quotes from parents. My favorite quotes from parents. But my kid wants to do it. My kid wants to do it. Okay? If your kid wants to be a professional gamer, you gonna let him play video games all day? My kid wants to be a competitive eater. He really wants it. Okay, go eat all day long. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's funny, but so he said that. So now my job as a parent is to come alongside of them and help them make small goals. So he's talked about shooting. We talked about these other things. But here's the most important part, Joey. Now when I go to Harrison and I talk to Harrison, when I've sat down with Harrison and go, Harrison, these are your goals. These are your dreams. Okay? I need you in my life to be an accountability partner for me. I'm going to be an accountability partner for you. But here's what the accountability looks like. And here's where I found to get the most success. All I do with Nicholas is, hey, bud, have you shot lately? I don't say, hey, bud, you said you wanted to shoot. You said this was your goal. But, hey, all I have to do is go give it a little prick. Have you shot lately? Have you been working on your goals? Have you been working on your devotion? Those are his dreams. Those are his goals that I'm just coming beside. So now it's coming beside them, and they're going, this is theirs, not dad's. This is dad trying to help, not dad trying to push. So it helped me with my relationship with my son big time. It helped me come alongside and support the journey as opposed to try to drive the journey, because I had a tendency to want to schedule and try to get you to do this, this, and this. And again, I'm not saying you don't grind. I think there is a time when you grind. But what I've noticed about baseball, basketball, football, hockey, lacrosse, whatever, everybody's got so much grind in them, and then they're grinded out and they're done. And they might still play it. They might still do it because they're good at it. But the love, the passion, and the want to work seems to subside. So that's, I think, that's, and by the way, I just did this. So listen to this, man. This is pretty cool. So I got a 12-year-old daughter now, Leah. Man, me and her had a great conversation the other night. The genesis of the conversation came from me screwing up, by the way, just to be clear. Like, we're at dinner. I made a comment to her about basketball, and I was talking as her coach instead of her dad. And I failed at dinner because I coach her. And she went up to her room, and I went up there for 45 minutes, and we sat on her bed, and we just talked. And I apologized for what I said. And I was like, listen, this is what I mean by that. You have some girls on your team who are very, very talented. You aren't as talented as X. Okay? Like, just being real with you. God-given ability, you don't have as much talent as her. But you do have other talents. Like, she's the best teammate on our team. Like, she is cheering for everybody. I was like, that's a huge skill. Like, that's a great skill to be a great teammate. I said, you play with great effort. You play better defense than anybody on our squad. And I pointed out some good things that she was doing. But I also said, hey, like, you don't put the ball in the bucket. Like, you don't score at a good clip. And, scoring is a big part of it. But when we sat down, so after that conversation, 45 minutes back and forth, best conversation we've ever had. I told her I was a 3-star going into college because there were people that were bigger, faster, stronger, had more natural ability, but I worked myself to a 5-star. And so I told her that. And then, we sat down the next day. Actually, that night, late that night, we were still up that night, and we went through some of her goals. And now me and her did that. So now, same thing with her. I get to come alongside Leah and support and create accountability with her and just try to help her, not be sarcastic, not be in their face, but like try to help them reasonably see that, like, you have these goals. It's going to take work, but I'm going to come support you in these goals. I'm not going to be the driving force in these goals.
Dude, that's so good. It's so perfect because our kids are right about the same ages, boy and girl, same order, and it's I made a very similar mistake as a talking to my daughter about her volleyball team, and it took about 45 minutes for me to talk my way out of it. Kind of the same thing, and it's funny how that relationship is so much different. But the key there is coming alongside their goals and not creating. I think one of the biggest things here is just it's their journey. It's their journey. I got to keep remembering that. That's so good. And it's, it's who knows if there's much deviation. I think what you said there is like, everybody's got so much grind in them until they grind out, and you're going to grind them out. One of the things my dad did absolutely best, there's a line, I forget exactly where it is in the New Testament, a verse that says like, don't exasperate your children. And that's what he did. And I know that I, as a dad, I have a tendency to do that with my kids. It's just exasperate them, which is something my dad never did. He was just always there alongside me.
But that comes from a place, Joey, of good. It doesn't come from a place of bad, but it also comes from a place of selfishness. And it also comes from a place of there's a reason you're trying to make them something.
That's true.
And we've got, and listen, this parlays directly, because I'll be glad to pop some people right in the mouth right now with some of this other stuff too, because this also parlays into what is the priority of your family? What are you focusing on? What is your family's mission? What does your family put first? What is your family going to be known for? What is your identity with your kids? And sports are amazing, but like sports have gotten out of control on weekends where we don't go to church.
That's so true.
Sports has gotten out of control on Wednesday nights where we don't go to church. And listen, I'm not going to sit here and tell you we don't miss church, but my kids know church is the priority, and we'll miss occasionally. But we're going to be in church a heck of a lot more than we're going to be out of it. And if that means we got to skip stuff, it's okay. Like skip stuff that we can control. Like it's interesting. The older they get, the harder that becomes, right? Because high school sports. But if you're a youth league athlete, like Nicholas, the last couple of years have had AAU basketball on Wednesday night. They practice in our gym outside. We have a gym in the backyard outside. Mm-hmm. Nicholas was at church on Wednesday nights because, and the cool part is he wanted to go to church. He made that decision to go to church. We definitely have guided him along the way that church is more important than sports, but it's really fun when they start to make those own decisions. But I don't think it comes from a bad place all the time where we're coming from. But again, if you choose to play travel ball and you're at the ball field every Sunday, and that's what you choose, and you're at tournaments every Sunday, your priority is ball over church. Your priority is ball over God. That's what you're showing your kids. Like you can use different words all you want to. More is caught than taught. Our actions are what they're catching. They're not catching. They'll catch some of our words, but they're going to model what you model. You need something. You need clarity of that, or you don't believe me. Go find an anxious parent. You'll find an anxious kid. Go find an anxious kid. You'll find an anxious parent. Like those are all things that go together. So what you model, what you show them. Modeling your walk with God. Like, are you modeling that? Are you modeling the different seasons of life, or are you praying with your kids? And those are all things that we got sports in a box in this world right now. That's what we don't realize is all these people that continue to make these tournaments, they're just making bukus of money. And that's what it's about. This isn't your kids. If your kids are good enough, by the way, they're good enough. I'm from Gwinnett County. I told you about mama and daddy, like how they raised me. Like I didn't go to camps. I didn't do anything. God blessed me with good genetics. And in the end, I was able to capitalize on it. Like you're not going to just all of a sudden freakishly change genetics. Like if they're good enough when they get to high school, they'll start to develop, and they'll develop at a fast rate. But you are responsible for their soul. And you are responsible for them learning the word and living in the word and living through and experiencing church. And those things are, dude, everybody's going to hang their basketball shoes up or their cleats up. But you're not going to hang in life. You're going to keep running the race and you're going to keep living. So
I read Matthew 6 this morning, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. And I made a note I have a note-taking Bible, and I just said, it was just a question for myself. Where is my heart? Where is my because I think I'm storing up a bunch of earthly treasures right now. I think we are playing a bunch of Sunday tennis tournaments. I think we are doing a bunch of weekend volleyball tournaments with my daughter. And there was no question in my mind when we were growing up what the priority was, because we were there 3 times a week. I'm not saying church attendance is the barometer necessarily, but even to your point, are we getting in the word together? Are we praying together? Are we all that? And I think you would, if you were to look at the evidence of what I'm doing, it would say like, you got a pretty good treasure you're storing up here on this side versus on the other side.
But when you can see that, you can change it.
Yeah,
if you don't see it, you can't change it. And listen, I told you, I messed it up. I messed it up when we were younger. I mean, I did it with my kids. And as we've gotten older, I mean, and if I could go back, I would do it different, bro. Like if I could go back and do it with young kids, man, I'm not sure how much we would play sports, but we would play it at a very small level. Like I'm not sure we'd have jumped into travel baseball as much as we did. And we found a great situation, and God put us in an unreal situation where we didn't play a lot of baseball. We didn't play a lot of tournaments. We just didn't do that. But I think we're going to run the race, and we're going to do all these things, and we're going to look back, and our kid's not even going to play baseball in high school. And you're going to be like, man, I wasted a lot of weekends. And you don't waste it when you're with your family and you get to spend time together. If you used it right, you can still capitalize on it. But the bottom line is, these kids, like 5 minutes after the game's over, they don't care. They just want ice cream. Like, why do we care? That was a big slap in the face for me. After games, I vividly remember riding home from Gainesville, and I didn't say a word the whole time because we were undefeated all year, and then we won the championship, and then I scheduled a team from Gainesville for like an extra game. It meant nothing, bro. It was an exhibition game that meant nothing. And I vividly remember being so pissed the whole way home and just so mad that we lost. And Nicholas is in the back seat like, hey, let's get some ice cream. Like, and it ticked me off then. But I'm like, you know what? Who's got the right perspective here? It ain't me. It's him. It's the 8-year-old that's showing me that he's got the right perspective, actually. Like, let it go. Move on. And listen, a part of that's what made me great. And a part of that now is what makes me successful in my life of what things, because I care and I'm competitive. But our journey with our kids, I mean, we've got to show them what's really, really important. And back to how we started this, we got to model it. Yeah. It's not do as I say, not as I do. If you want to raise kids that don't do as you say, then do that. Yeah. Then don't do it. If you do
probably
it,
won't like you. Yeah.
Yeah. If you do it, if you do it, they're going to do it. Like my son and daughter, just to watch them and some of the spiritual things they're doing now. I'm not going to cry. I am a crier. I'm not going to cry. But like, it blows my mind, and it makes me so happy. And it makes me way happier when they're in worship this past weekend at Surge Weekend, and they got their hands up and they're praising God. I'm like, dude, all right, I'm doing something right. Like something's clicking. Like all that other crap, man, that's good. That's all. Who cares? Like they got a relationship with God. They got a relationship with Jesus, dude. That's what I'm talking about.
So good. It really is. I mean, this is as timely a conversation as I've had. This is good because it just helps you refocus, recenter. I played out a scenario in my mind the other day. If I knew that I were going to die, like what am I saying to my kids? What am I looking back on? That'll change your perspective right there. Just think, okay, well, how do I live today? You know what I mean?
I've asked my kids the same thing. Like if you were going to die, you had 3 days left, what would you do? And it's just interesting to hear the answers. Along those lines, like I think asking your kids those questions are really good ways to start planting seeds in their heart of who they want to be around and who they want to hang around. Like I think one of the smartest things I did in the car, and I just started doing it. I don't know why. I'm sure I heard something somewhere, but I was like, hey, who's y'all's wisest friend? Like, what do you mean?
It's a great
question. Like, who's your wisest friend? Who's a friend that they got your back no matter what? And start asking those questions. And so, Joey, what happens is they start seeing that now. Yeah. And my buddy, my son will name a couple of his buddies, and they'll be like, yeah, he's got my back. Like they'll notice that, like, who doesn't make you feel uncomfortable? Like some people will call you out in front of your buddies and make you feel uncomfortable, like put you on the spot, say crazy things, say wacky things. I was like, some people are inappropriate, but when we start prodding with those questions, I think they start an internal dialogue because they got to think about it. And then when somebody does something, they're like, bam, remember when my dad asked me that? Like, I'll say, who's your best friend? Who do you have the most fun with? Like other questions like that too. But again, getting that little bit of those seeds just planting in their heart. And so they hopefully start to realize who they're hanging out with, how important it is. And as they get older, it only gets more and more fun, man. I mean, just getting to see it you get to see it come to harvest, and you get to see them start making good choices, and they're going to make bad choices too. They're going to mess up.
Yeah, for sure. I want to go back to your college career was can I say illustrious? I think we could say that. It's illustrious. I mean, one of the top 3 defensive players ever in the SEC, and you were out there and did some amazing things. A bunch of awards you won, and then you go to the Bengals. You mentioned that. Started game 6 of the first season, and then from then on you were starting, and then game 2 of the second season, a big hit put you down, and I want to hear about that, and that which ultimately ended your career. I don't want to lead too much there. Will you talk through that? I know you've done it 1,000 times. Will you talk through that moment, that process, what that was like to be sidelined, and then what came from it?
Well, from the time I was 6 years old, I didn't tell you, but I told you a little bit about my dad's stuff. But the time I was 6 years old, I always told my parents I was going to play in the NFL. And I got more looks from everybody else that were just like, yeah, that's cute, pat you on the head, things like that. And along the journey, obviously. So I finally made my dream come true. You know, I'd been successful. I was a first round draft pick, and I was living out my dream. And then second year, second play, second season or second game, just go in. One of my goals was to be more physical because I played defensive end in college, and I moved back to linebacker. So more space between plays, you can deliver bigger blows. And back then you actually could tackle people without getting fined and getting kicked out of football games. Back then it was actually a really physical game. And so I come up and I hit Reuben drums, and it was just different. It was a different hit. First time ever, I was numb from my waist up and couldn't get up and was kind of stuck there. And I've had stingers, but this was different. So they strapped me to the gurney, and then they took me underneath the facility, and there's a CT scan in there and all that stuff. And doctor comes out and he's like, "Hey man, you fractured your C6, C7." I'm like, "Sweet." You know, was that a couple weeks? He was like, "That means you broke your neck." I was like,
But this was on site?
This was on site. Oh yeah, this was in the stadium. And I was like, "Can we stick to fractured C6, C7? Because that sounds a heck of a lot better than broken neck. Broken neck sounds like a real deal." But I'll never forget, man, the journey from that point on is what I embrace and what I love, is because it goes from that to me and my wife in the back of an ambulance and both tears flooding our eyes. Just knowing that everything I had worked for and fought for since I was 6 and dreamed for, that there's a good chance it could be gone. Wow. And it was gone. And I started to, I got the halo, the halo they drill into your skull. And I tell everybody I've always been an angel. I just finally got the halo to go with it. So I got the halo and started my new journey, man. And the journey to trying to be healthy, to trying to get back to being able to use your arms and legs at a high rate, to get some strength back, because, throughout the process that you're just sitting there and you're just trying to develop. But man, the Bible says, "Be still and know that I am God." And I didn't do that. That wasn't something that I did well. I didn't be still. If I had an extra 5 minutes, I was running. If I had an extra 5 minutes, I was playing something. I was playing video games. I was doing X. I was going to get into something. I was going to turn the TV on, and watch TV. But I had never done that. So I never got the chance to sit down and listen to God and what he had for my life and what he had for me and what he had for people in my life and relationships that I had and stuff. So, I mean, the singular, like this on the hand of, 1 through 5. And I got to say, obviously my wife and my kids being, the greatest things to happen to me. I put that right up there on that hand. Because now my life goes from about me and my goals and my dreams to now I'm I get cleared to work out my first day out of my neck brace, and I benched 455 in college, that sounds great. But by the way, that was like 30th on the team probably, because you get a bunch of freak shows. But I benched 135 twice, and I was like this.
Wow.
And so I was like, dude, you got to suck it up. You got to shut up, and you got to realize today I got to get better today. And I started to develop that, just an everyday counts mentality. And that's where it came, my everyday counts challenge that I do in November every year. But just changed my mindset. It changed my friend group. It changed the way I looked at my wife. It has made me Yeah, I had a bunch of friends that were great friends that, when you're not playing football and you're not making big money, a lot of times, you don't necessarily hear from them as much. You're not as cool of a person to visit then.
Yeah.
But it was just, it was so great because it taught me patience. It taught me what it was like to handle adversity. It taught me what it was like to look myself in the mirror through hard times and realize God's going to provide. And to stand on that faith that I had, that I did have faith. I found faith, thank goodness, before I went to college, and I strengthened my faith with Coach Rick at Georgia. But I got to walk it out and prove it. And here's the thing now, still till this day, man. A lot of times my prayer this year has been very specific for me. My prayer has been, like you go and speak to all these places, Pollack. You go on Joey's podcast right now, and you talk and you say all these things. My prayer has been, God, I want to be the same person that is on that podcast, that's on TV, that's speaking at churches, that's with Lindsay, that goes to bed with Lindsay and wakes up with Nicholas and Leah. And I think going through some real stuff, man. You look at the Bible. Everybody in there went through real stuff. Those are really flawed humans that went through real stuff that God used to do amazing things. And I think God showed me, like, listen, bro, football ain't your identity. Football is something you did. I'm your identity. And it strengthened my identity in God. It strengthened my relationship with God. It strengthened my adversity. It strengthened everything about me got better, except for my neck and except for my playing career. That came to an end.
Do you look at it since then? That has to, it seems to me like it would provide a framework. Like you're going through something tough, be like, hold on, I broke my neck. God took me through it. I mean, is that kind of like the lens you look through everything with now? You just say, well, look what I've been through, right?
Well, I think all of us, some of you that worry a lot, that worry about outcomes, that worry about job, worry about family, worry about kids, worry about relationships, like. Worrying's a rocking chair. It'll give you something to do. It ain't gonna get you nowhere, right? Like it's a waste of time. And what I think, and I already had a lot of that in me anyways, Joey. But I think what it did was it showed me that God's in control of outcomes. So I have a choice every day, and I can choose to surrender and just let it be, whatever it is. Like I'm at this season in life because God wants me there. I'm at this season in life because God wants me there. Here's the thing. I told my middle school group this, my group of 8th grade kids at this church weekend. They all spent the night. I had 19 of them in my house, and we spent the night, a couple nights in a row. And we went through a couple of the questions we had. And I was like, listen, I said, when you complain about your height, when you complain about your eye color or your personality, I was like, you're basically complaining to God about how he made you.
What he did. Yeah.
He's the one who made you. So there's a reason you were made on purpose for a purpose. Like, and he made you only this way could you fulfill the mission you have in your life. And so when you complain, you're complaining to him. And I think this world would be so much of a better place, a safer place. People would be so much healthier if they realize God's in control. All I can do is my very best. All I can do is surrender daily, pick up my cross, realize he's in control. Realize that I'm living my life, but ultimately, if today it changes, it could change today and I could be gone. And I think one of the biggest lessons from my halo and from my neck and from that instance you're talking about is no matter what I'm going through, someone's always got it worse.
Yeah.
Like there's mothers that buried their children today. That shouldn't happen. Mm-hmm. Like there's spouses of 30 years that they're burying their spouse. Like there's so many things in this world that happen. If you look around, you're like, man, I don't have it that bad. It could be a lot worse, but it's just perspective a lot of times that we don't want to take. We want to dwell on our stuff and dwell in the moment of stuff when we got to realize that ultimately we ain't in control anyway.
Well, yeah, you had that perspective in the moment. That's what's cool. I mean, you can go back and watch the game film. You were in your halo visiting kids in the hospital saying the exact same line. There are other people who have it worse. There are other people. So why would I not? I mean, I shot you a text yesterday with it. Like I was moved, inspired by that in the moment. Here's a 24, 25-year-old kid, you in your halo going to see kids in the hospital.
Well, the thing that was cool about that, man, was I thought it was really cool because I got to go show them that I was beat up too. Like, and here's the thing: we all got scars, whether you can see them, and I got plenty of scars from football, So a lot of us got emotional scars you can't see. You know, a lot of us are going through stuff that people don't know about that's very difficult on us. But I think when you can show up in a hospital with kids that are hurting and going through different diseases, going through different fights, and you can show up like this in a halo and you can't really move and say, I got a broken neck, bro, but it's going to be all right. You know, I think it's very powerful. But listen, I'm not perfect like anybody else, man. And we're all going to have those moments we're all going to have those moments of doubt. And I think when you can arm yourself with the right stuff, and to me, the right stuff is when you can arm yourself with some scripture, and you can know that when I experience fear, God doesn't give me the spirit of fear. God gives me power, love, a sound mind. Like when we can do that stuff, man, like when we realize that, what does God say about me? God says I'm adopted. God says I'm loved. God says I'm chosen. Like when we can adopt those things as opposed to what the world says about us. Because if you listen to the world, man, you're going to be in a dark place. I mean, because the world's going to say some bad things about you. But when you can listen to what God says about you and arm yourself with that, I think it makes us stronger, man. I think it makes us better. It makes us less anxious. It makes us our vulnerable moments a lot less vulnerable, and our painful moments a lot less painful.
We had Scott Hamilton, if you remember Scott Hamilton, he's the Olympic gold medalist skater. Had a conversation with him last week on the podcast, and when he was very young, he had a disease that they thought was going to kill him, and it ended up being the thing that got him into figure skating. It stunted his growth for a long time, that kept him short at 5'3", which made him an effective skater, and all this stuff. And he said a line that I loved. He said, "We're drawing conclusions about our current situations without all the context."
I like that too.
And so think about that. Of course, your dream has ended as you lay on that field, but you've said that's the greatest thing. You just said it's the greatest thing outside of your family that's happened to you. You didn't have all the context, but those, and if you were to look at that circumstance, of course you would have gotten down in the dumps and could have gone to depression, could have gone to substances, but instead you turned to something else and understood there probably just wasn't context you didn't know yet.
Well, and what if we said, when circumstances like that come, like, man, this has been awesome. This has been a really good ride. I've loved this. Can't wait to see what God has next.
Yeah.
Like what if we could adopt that? What if we could say, hey, man, that came to an end. It was a good run. That company was a blessing, but I got fired. Man, what's God got for me next? Because like, to me, it was like football was amazing. It was my dream. It was everything I wanted. I was like, and I thought I was born to be a football player. I thought with my big big lower half, my energy level, the aggressiveness, like all of that, like it paid off. And that's what I was made to do. Well, now I go into commentating. I'm doing College GameDay. And I'll tell you a quick story how I got into the media, which is good. I'm sitting there watching 2006, I think. Georgia's playing LSU, we're comparing Georgia and LSU, but LSU won the SEC, Georgia didn't. And Herbstreit's on television saying, if you don't win the conference, you can't play for the national title. And I'm sitting there on the couch yelling, and I'm yelling at the TV screen. I'm like, what is this Humpy talking about? Like, shut up, man. Just ticked off. And I'll never forget, the next day I called my agent. I was like, hey, if I can't do football again, which I was pretty sure I wasn't, I think I could do the TV thing. And he was like, well, why do you say that? I was like, well, I think I checked, a lot of the boxes. I'm loud, I'm opinionated, I'm obnoxious. Like, I think I got a lot of things that will tick people off and draw people in. So that's kind of how I got into broadcasting by that. But like now people tell me like this, man, I feel like you were made to be a broadcaster. Yeah. And what I was made to do was to live every day and glorify God. And what I was made to do was work hardly unto the Lord, right? Colossians, work hardly unto the Lord, and chase every day, work hard. Like every day, give my best. And then God's going to see different areas in I'll be the first to tell you, there's a big part of me that wants to coach. Why? Why would you give up, not working as hard on television, getting paid a shoot ton of money? And I would like to get paid. I would like to do high school football, which you're not going to get paid hardly anything. But again, I get a day in my head. I'm like, I get a daily impact with these kids. And I did. I coached last year at the same time, which was unbelievable. And it was rewarding. Like, so I'm still going through those things. Like, and I think everybody asks themselves that question. Is this what God made me to do? Is this what is this really what I am supposed to be doing? Like, I think that's a normal question that everybody has daily and probably reassesses yearly, because at 40, you ain't what you were at 30, and your goals and ambition and intuition, all that stuff has changed. But if we get a daily mindset of I'm going to be great today. Today is going to be a day that I'm going to work hard, and I'm going to do everything I can, and I'm going to honor and glorify God, and I'm going to let the chips fall where they may. Like, it's amazing. You look up, and you could do a lot more things than probably you thought you could.
Yeah. Well, when you change that perspective and you say, like, well, that you're here to glorify God no matter what you're doing. There's a line that I've heard. I don't know if it's true, but it's really good. But it says the root of the term profession is that your profession is the means by which you profess Christ. So whatever you're doing, that's how you do it. That's just your current vehicle. So whether you are a football player or you're a broadcaster or a high school football coach, all of those are just your means by which you profess Christ.
Yeah, I like that. I've never heard that before either.
Again, I don't know if it's true, but it sounds good, right?
Well, if it sounds good, we can use it, right? I mean,
you just say it. Yeah, exactly. Hey, can we keep cranking? I know you got some calf raises and bicep curls to go. So we all right. So you talk about that. I want to jump ahead to something, and this was just a fun thing. You said you're loud and obnoxious and you're opinionated. You were a little obnoxious and opinionated in front of the GOAT. Nick Saban not long ago when you said you're sitting, but this is just great. For those who've not seen it, it's wonderful. You got to see it. Pretty innocuous comment, honestly. You're sitting there, national championship game, and you said, I'm going to read it. Georgia, obviously, we've seen from the past couple of seasons now, really, they've taken hold of college football. Hey, innocuous line, not a bad line. But you got Nick Saban 18 inches to your right, and there are gifs and they're just him just shooting darts at you with his eyes. Did you guys have any off camera? We could edit this if we need to. Did you guys have any off camera? Did he rib you and be like, dude, really? Like while I'm sitting here?
No, he never said a word. Never showed any emotion. I did text him the next day, and I just said, hey man, this is getting blown up like crazy, because I saw it was getting hit everywhere. And I was just, do you have a second to talk? And I called him that night. And I wanted to clarify my heart and my intentions. I just told him, I was like, listen, I looked at you as an analyst. Like, I never once thought about you as the coach of Alabama. Like, I just literally, they were talking about Stetson, and I just furthered the conversation. And I said, I wasn't trying to make you look some kind of way or make you feel some kind of way. Yeah. And he was like, the fact that you're calling me shows me that. He was like, he said, I didn't take it that way. And so I'm not surprised. I wouldn't have thought Nick would have, but the people that made memes and slowed motion and put music behind it. Exactly. And, it was crazy how much.
It was crazy.
And by the way, I left the site. I never thought about it twice. And then the next morning, I do Get Up, and I'm on Get Up, and they show the clip, and I'm like, oh, crap. I was like, geez, maybe this is kind of I didn't realize this was going to be a big deal. Never thought about it, but yeah, it was definitely. I mean, I didn't say anything I didn't apologize to Nick, because I didn't say anything that was wrong. I just wanted him to know that I wasn't trying to make him look some kind of way, and I wasn't doing it maliciously. But when you win back-to-back national championships, you're the king of college football, whether you like it or not.
100%. And I think if you would have, I haven't looked at this, but if you looked at all the other guys' expressions, they probably would have been the same. And I think Nick, he's such a professional, my assumption is he didn't think a thing about it. And I thought he probably thought his role was as an analyst, and you can't put guys at the desk and then water down what you're going to say. You still have to talk as an analyst. So I think that your take on that was very, very fair. And I assume it's like you don't hold back on talking about Ohio State when you're next to Herb Street just because he played there. Right. I mean,
it's a good point. I never thought about that.
Give your opinion as an analyst.
Yeah.
So I just think if we could stir up some controversy here on the Aro Podcast, get some more listeners or something.
Yeah, it was interesting.
Man, I want to hear about the way we connected. You put out a tweet, which I ended up, I told you this, I got 6 people who sent it to me over lunch. You said, I have a phone problem. I said, I'm a horrible example for my 2 kids. Recently, when we go places as a family, I start leaving me and my son's phone in the car. Amazing and not surprising results. Better husband and dad. Leave that phone behind some this holiday season. So you are an intentional dad, and it's that was inspiring to me, and it's been an interesting. I'd love to hear a little bit about that journey, how you all have prioritized that within your family. This is not me asking for any kind of plug. I'm just asking the actual principle of you putting that down and focusing on each other and how transformational that's been.
Well, I think I don't think I know, man. You see the control of the phones on this country now, and
Yeah.
I see them on kids. I talked to you about the church retreat this weekend, and I took all their phones, and but like I want to say around 10 o'clock on Saturday night when we had at our house, and it was amazing to watch the kids connect and to watch them play games and to watch them communicate and to watch them find things to do. But we just get so disconnected because listen, we're probably the smartest. I guess this generation is the most inquisitive and probably smartest generation because they have access to so much information at their fingertips all the time that we had to look up in an encyclopedia back in the day, or online.
Yeah.
So I think this generation is super smart because of that, but it's also the most secluded and it's also the most depressed. And it's just interesting how much that screen can change your interactions and that screen. And when you remove it, it takes away distractions and how much conversations comes about. But, again, back to earlier, more is caught than taught. What you model is what you're going to make. And if phones are something that you're always on, again, don't tell them to get off the phone. You get off your phone. And that's what I had to do. I had to get off my phone. And I had to find a way to get rid of it. And I had to find a way to not make it something that it's always attached to me. I had to make it where I could literally get my text messages and I'd get it through my car and I'd make sure that it was plugged up because I want them to see that I got it. And because you can't read it, it just says text, but I don't have to check it either.
Yeah.
Like when you get a check message or when you get a message, it doesn't mean you have to check it right now and answer right now. I'm like, I'll get back to him later. Or if somebody calls me, I can get back to him later. So I think the genesis of that was I needed to do a better job modeling it because I was asking for it from my son who just got a phone. He just got a phone in 8th grade. And we're going through this phone phase with him now. But I realized if I don't model it, I can't accept it. I can't say anything about it if I'm going to continue to do that. So once we started to model that more as a family, and then we took it obviously to the next level with the Aro box. And, like last week, me and my son are battling it out and it was hilarious because we're both over the box to keep our session going. We're texting so we can keep our phone in there to battle each other to see who has the most time. We just took it to the next level. And beside our box, we have a framed picture. And we sat down as a family and we came up with cell phone rules. These are our non-negotiable rules. This is how the box are going to handle cell phones. Like when we're in somebody's car and we're interacting with people, our phone's going to be down and we're going to be talking. That's a rule. Like we're going to have conversation. When you get home from school, you can be on your phone for 15 minutes. You can take the time, catch up with all the things you need to catch up. Now your phone goes in the box and we're going to do homework. 9 o'clock, the phones go in the box. Like you're done. You're done with your phone at 9 o'clock. You don't need to answer anybody's text. They'll be there in the morning. They'll be waiting for you and you won't miss anything. But I think, it's funny because now guess what Nicholas and Leah do? They come home from school and I'm in the car, Joey, and they're like, man, you should and this is where it's hard because, you're trying to raise kids in the gospel and not judgmental, but they'll be like, man, you're right. These phones, I see my friends, they're in them all the time. They're engulfed in them and it's consuming them. And I'm like, yeah, I was like, listen, it happens to all of us. We go through those moments where it consumes them and, but trying to not be judgmental, like that's something that they probably can work on too, and that they're going to continue to work on. And once the new wears off, a lot of times with people, they get less enthralled with it, but there's just, social media and if you've seen, the social dilemma and how they continue to send out things to make you're close to people and to connect people to people, and it's just a constant connection. And what does this story go back to for me? This story goes back to when I was still, I found God and God met me. When I was still, I could listen to God. If I'm not still, I can't do that. If I'm always got a phone and I'm always getting my dopamine, I'm always getting a response, I don't have that opportunity to really have that. And my son, he loves to read. And I think if we let him stay on his phone all the time, it'd probably be something he'd stay on his phone and he wouldn't read as much. And he just crushes books like nobody's. I mean, he's done with. He read two already this week. One was 400 pages, one was 350. We're like,
it's Thursday.
It's Thursday. I'm like, what the heck else have you done this week? Like, he was like, well, in class, as soon as we're done, he was like, I break out my book. He was like, I love my books. Wow. And I actually said to him the other day, I'm like, hey, bud, you read all these books. And he has. And he's probably read, this summer he went through 10, 15 books. And during a week, he goes through several books. And we get books every week in the mail. But I said, buddy, what if you read your Bible like that?
Yeah.
I said, what if you just and so yesterday he started. He was in Matthew and he's on Matthew 4 already. But he started last night and he was like, I'm taking it to school. He said, I said, buddy, you could rip through the New Testament like that. I was like, it'd be unbelievable what kind of scripture you could start to put in your heart and how you could arm yourself for war that's coming throughout your way. Because if you're not going through a storm, it's coming. So you better be storing up and arming yourself and getting ready for it coming. So, I just think when we eliminate distractions, when we eliminate the phone, we choose family more. We choose more things that I think are way healthier than screen time. We choose relationship. We choose communication. I don't think you're going to find very many things that we choose that are negative when we put our phones up. But again, back to your original comment, it's got to be intentional. And it requires intentionality from mom, dad, and kids. Because if you don't intentionally put your phone in there and you don't lead by example, you're not gonna model. You're not gonna make it. You're not gonna make what you want from them because you didn't model it.
Yeah. I was reading a study the other day about teenage unhappiness. It's at an all-time high. Their unhappiness is at a high, happiness is at a low. They were talking about this. It aligns with as phones continue to become get in prominence, but as I read, of course, kids are on social media. They're comparing themselves. Of course, that's going to bring you down. But this is a generation of kids who's so used to their parents looking at a screen instead of their faces. And so what does that do to a kid and their sense of value when their parents won't even look at them because they're looking at the screen? So I think this tie-in to unhappiness is even more so begins with us as dads, as moms, and putting that down and looking at them in the face because you value what you look at. And so I think this unhappiness epidemic begins with that. Let's just look at our kids in the face and know that they're important. That's it. Just that act in and of itself.
Yeah, people want to spend quality time with their kids and want to spend time with their kids. Everybody on their phone ain't quality time.
Yeah.
I mean, I think this device is 100% the greatest Satan's greatest invention. I mean, I think it's done more for dividing us and individualizing us and causing more depression and angst and more comparison, what does the Bible say? It's the enemy of joy, right? Like you're not going to get joy because we compare. And that's the hard thing as a dad is how do I navigate that? Like, do we get him a phone? When do we get him a phone? Those are things that every family has to deem, important at what time you do it, but it dang sure doesn't have to be when they're young. Because they're not missing out on any. My kids were one of the only ones in 6th and 7th grade that didn't have cell phones. I get it, but it didn't change their life. And my son got one this year in 8th grade, and it's still the same. His life's not any worse off or any different. We gotta make that decision. We gotta prioritize like social media right now. And I say right now because my kids are in 8th and 7th grade. Like right now, it's not negotiable. And my son and daughter will tell you, I don't want social media. And they tell you that now because they've been brainwashed by us, obviously. And they're like, it's not good. It's not good. It's not good. It's not good. But, there's also going to come to a point when they're in 9th, 10th, or 11th grade when everybody's on it. It's the way people communicate. How do I do this? But, I would argue this. Your brain continues to develop as you get older. As you get older, it develops more and more. So the more we can hold off, the more strength they have in who they are and what they are, the more developed their mind is where they can control some of the comparison game. But when you give it to them and they're 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, that's their first reaction because, again, you've parented an 11-year-old versus a 14-year-old. There's a big difference in what they can get. So I think everybody needs to do a good job of pushing that back as long as possible. And you know what? It's not enough, Joey. the answer is not good enough because everybody else does it.
So right.
It's not good enough, man. Not it, not if you want your family to be exceptional. Like if you want your family to be different and you want to stand on different principles, it's really good to be different. It's really
Yeah.
good to do things different. And guess what? We're all created differently. We're not all created the same. We're all created like we talked about for our own purpose, but like I can't say you get a phone because they got a phone. That's not the way that's not the way we're gonna do it. Let me tell you why.
Yeah.
But Napster, Nicholas, let me tell you why. Like Lee, let me tell you why. Like because I have a relationship with my phone that I don't like.
Yeah.
And I don't want you to have that relationship right now because I want you to be a kid and not have worries and not have to worry about X, Y, and Z. And I think when we do that and we level with them really well, I think you'd be surprised how well received you'll get from your kids if you can have those conversations.
Bro, that's so true. People are shocked. We hear stories all the time. We just don't give our kids enough credit. Our kids can absolutely adapt and they will love it. And we just don't give enough credit. Well, no, this just no, they're gonna have withdrawals. No, they're not. They're gonna be fine. About 5 minutes after, they're gonna be just fine, and they're gonna love it, and they're gonna appreciate it just like you. They're gonna recognize it in others. So it's a gift for sure. Um, all right, I got just a couple more minutes. I asked you at the beginning when you had to go, and you said about 30 minutes ago, but I'm just going to keep going while I have you.
Well, at least that means it's probably good. So that's good. At
It's
least
real good.
Otherwise, you'd have told me, get the heck on out of here.
Oh, yeah, 15 minutes. We gotta
We got to go, bro.
All right, this is impromptu. I've not prepped you for this, but off the cuff, can I get an upcoming season report on two teams that are important to me? My Oklahoma Sooners. I'm Sooner born and Sooner bred. When I die, I'm Sooner dead. And the Tennessee Volunteers. I'm here in Rocky Top. I live in Knoxville. So can you give me a little preview of both teams?
Well, I think Oklahoma, they did a really good job recruiting, which was good because there was a lot of negativity once they started going downhill. But if you watched Oklahoma last year, when Dylan Gabriel played, they were a pretty dang good team. But he got banged up, and that changed the whole course of their season and, in the course of their offense and the way they play fast and the way everything they wanted to do got kind of sidetracked. Kind of like Tennessee, by the way, when Hendon Hooker went out, it got a little bit sidetracked for them. But I think Oklahoma's going to be just fine. I think Venables is a great coach. I like what he kind of said late in the year. He's like, listen, if you don't want to be here, go somewhere else. Pretty simple. You don't have to come here. I don't care if you come here. If you don't want to be here, go somewhere else. If you don't want to come fight, then go somewhere else. So I think they'll be good. They're not going to be back to being dominant yet or where they were with Kyler Murray and Mayfield and those guys, but I think they'll be one of the better teams in the Big 12 next year. And then Tennessee, I think they're going to be super interesting because they went all in with transfer portal and bringing guys in. They did a lot of that, and I think Hendon Hooker was special. I think they hit lightning in a bottle, and the way he developed and his maturity and his age, really did well in that offense. Obviously, they're bringing in, young gun quarterback who's all world everything, which I think will take time. To get him where he was. Losing Hyatt, losing Tillman, losing their right tackle. They had the best right tackle in sports last year. Nobody talked about it as much because it was so high flying. But their offensive line was actually pretty decent. So I think how Heupel can follow this season up will go a long way to see if this Tennessee team's got staying power. Because I think they were really good, but they kind of had a good situation come to fruition. Can they recruit and stay at a high level now? Just mixing they see the next quarterback. Can he do what Hendon Hooker type stuff did? He's got an elite arm. He can throw it over a mountain, for God's sakes. He can chuck it. Milton. Yeah. He could throw the mess out of it, but I'm very interested to see what they do for an encore. I'm not ready to say they're going to be, a 10-win team again or anything like that. But I think, Tennessee, if they can prove another good year and recruit well and not have to go all transfer portal type-esque, I think he could start building something. But I do like Heupel. I think he's a great coach.
Yeah, he's got a great offensive mind. Milton might put a hole through somebody's chest this year. I mean that he is, and if he could rein that cannon in, I mean he could be pretty nasty.
Strengths, weaknesses, arm strength is not an issue. Where it's going to go is going to be an issue sometimes. But if he can just learn to take something off of it occasionally and just how to put some air underneath the ball and let your guy run underneath it, I think either way in that system. Here's what Tennessee has. Tennessee has a unique system in the SEC that as long as they keep getting fast guys on the outside if they can get some good linemen and they get that quarterback, they're going to be fun to watch. Like they're going to be a really fun team with a lot of unbelievable scoring power every year. I think their teams are going to be good offenses and score, but can you get the defensive side of the ball rolling? Can you get those guys? Can you recruit well on that side of the ball? I think you can get transfers on offense, but can you get some dudes on defense and develop them and make them a decent defense and not have to beat Alabama, 50-48?
Right.
I mean, you can beat them a close score, 51-48, whatever it was.
Yeah. Back to Oklahoma real quick. Venables I just want him to succeed so much because he's such a good man. I mean, his story is great and he's just a good man. And I really hope he just got so much good intensity. I think the players love each other. And I know we've lost like all of our listeners because I'm talking about Oklahoma football here, but he's just such a good man. He's just such a good dude. I really, really hope they succeed. Not obviously because I'm a homer and I'm biased, but hoping a lot for him. He's just the real deal.
He is the real deal. He's a good
dude. All right, we've taken up way too much of your time. I have, I do want to hear. Well, let me ask the question first. The question we ask everybody, and you clearly, I think you've said it for the last hour or so. Basically, you've illustrated it. But what we ask this question, it's intentionally broad, it's intentionally vague. The Aro Podcast is all about intentionality. What is that term? What does intentionality mean to David Pollack?
Purposeful. It means making choices with a purpose. I think that would be how I describe it is, and I think intentionality is making choices with a purpose every day. Like being intentionality requires an everyday pursuit, like intentionality in everything you do. Intentionality is in everything. I mean, if you want to be great at anything, you're going to need a large helping of intentionality. You want to be a great football player, you got to be intentional in the way you work in the weight room. You want to be a great commentator, you got to be intentional in the way you watch tape. I mean, anything you do is going to take a large heaping spoon of intentionality. But I think it also, parenting takes intentionality. I mean, our walk takes intention. Everything in life, you got to have that intentionality of a goal of what you're going for. Parents, you need a mission statement for your family, like what you're pursuing, like what it is what are the important things for the Pollacks? What are the important things for your family? So I think intentionality is everywhere and in everything.
That's so good. It's so true. And you show it and the thing I like about that, it's maybe different from what we've heard from others, is the everyday element of it. It is an everyday thing. It's not just that you intend to do something well. You got to put some purpose behind it every single day.
Everybody's got great intentions.
Yeah.
Everybody wants. I mean, that's what I told my daughter when I sat on her bed with her. I was like, everybody wants to be great. I could throw a wide net across everybody that everyone wants to be great, but very few is going to cast it in and dial it in and be intentional in their pursuit of being great. Like it's easy to have great intentions, but intentionality is the opposite. I'm going to get this thing done. Like I'm going to make sure I don't go to bed tonight without getting X, Y, and Z done. That's a totally different animal.
There are two things. I've seen people know where to reach you in the fall. They just tune into ESPN in the mornings and on Thursday nights when you're commentating. But two places I want to direct people. One is the Pollack Family Foundation. I know you all have a big event coming up, and it's a great foundation, the way you guys support families and being healthy, and that's not just physically, but also emotionally, spiritually. So I want people to go there. What's the website for the Pollack Family Foundation?
The PollackFamilyFoundation.com.
Look at that.
Yeah,
Write that one down. And then the other one that everybody should listen to, this has to be a must listen, is your podcast, Family Goals Podcast, with you and Pastor Jay. It is awesome. Can you give us a little commercial for the Family Goals Podcast?
Man, I tell you what, I didn't think it would ever turn to where it's been, and I think it'll still grow. But like the amount of people that have hit me up about it is crazy because like for example, Dansby Swanson, who's in Chicago playing for the Cubs, he was texting me. He was like, "Dude, I found your podcast through somebody, and dude, it's helping me with my marriage." And
that's awesome. So he's newly married too.
Yeah, he's like, I'm newly married. I don't have kids yet. He's like, I think this is going to help me with kids big time too. But like the Family Goals Podcast is me and my pastor. And dude, we're going to go over different things that help you become a better husband, a better mother, a better father. It's going to be very practical stuff. Like we just went through the 5 Love Languages book. And it was really cool because, how do your kids feel loved? Like we talk about from our spouse standpoint all the time when you get married and you start to plug in like, oh, I know my wife likes this. I need to do this. I know this is important to my wife. Well, your kids are the same way. And, like one of the last ones we had, it's simple questions like a simple question to ask your daughter or your son. How do you know daddy loves you? Right away, you know exactly what their love language is. My daughter was like, you hug me and kiss me. Well, my daughter needs hugs and kisses, bro. Like I need to make sure that I'm touching her. I'm giving her hugs. I'm making sure that I fulfill, her love language. And, Scott Drew out in Baylor, he's the head coach of Baylor basketball. He hit me up. Was like, dude, I'm using this with my two boys who are 14 and 11. He was like, this stuff is awesome. Keep doing it. And so it's been a closet. We started in a closet and we just started kind of putting things out to try to help marriages. And we focused big time in the beginning on youth league sports. A lot of the stuff I talked about to start the podcast. And then it's morphed and we've had Tony Dungy and John Gordon and Herb Street. And we've had so many, Mark Rick, so many good guests too that have shared their stories of parenting and faith and failure and success.
It's you said it right. It is so practical. I mean, it's aspirational. It's all the stuff we want to do, but then it is like to that, what's the question you need to ask? It's so good. And I will attest to it. Anybody who's listening to this needs to listen to that. You subscribe to it. It's so good. So it's awesome. Thank you for that. Give us a little beef on Herb Street. Let's close out with some controversy. Like what's some Herbie stuff we could start circulating around? It doesn't have to be true. Let's just say something.
It doesn't have to be true. Yeah, it doesn't have to be true. We just want to get clicks. That's all we need.
Yeah, that's all we're looking for, right?
Hey, I'll tell you a quick story about Herb Street. So I'm doing CBS College Sports. No, I'm doing Fox SEC Gridiron Live. Ever heard of that? Absolutely not. No, you sure haven't. And we do our shows late on, I want to say Tuesday nights. I'm in Atlanta, still doing radio in Atlanta. And I get a phone call. And I knew Kirk when I was in Ohio with the Bengals. He was an Ohio guy. He lived in Ohio. And I get a phone call after the show. And he was like, dude, this is Herbie. Hey, man, I just found you on the tube and you're good. Like, I think you should do this. I think you should come be. I'm like, yeah, bro, of course. And so like he's like, you should do a segment with us on College GameDay. And I'm like, where's it at? He's like, we're at Oregon this weekend. I was like, I'll fly. I'm in. He was like, I meant record like you from where you're at. And he's like, not really like come. I was like, oh crap. But he got me set up with ESPN. And so it was really, really cool. It's a good story on Kirk. He saw me, he believed in me, he poured in me. And, just like Eddie Shaddix believed in me back in the day in high school. And, we always have that opportunity to believe in folks and to give them a chance and to try to help them succeed. And I think I'll be eternally great. I tell them every year. I make sure I let them know every year how thankful I am because I would not be on television if it wasn't for Kirk seeing that and doing something about it.
Man, that's awesome.
It wasn't quite the dirt.
No,
the controversy.
I was looking for a little bit of dirt. Yeah, no, I was looking for a little bit of like something like he does. No, he seems like the real deal. Dude, you've been far, far, far too generous with your time. Thank you very, very much. This is amazing. This may have to be like a 3-parter. I mean, this is good stuff. So thank you. Thank you for what you're doing, man. Thank you for being bold about encouraging people and being bold with your faith and using that platform again, using that profession you have to profess Christ and to be a light, man. Thank you.
Appreciate it, brother.